Howdy everybody, Tom with the Museum of the Great Wars with the amazing folks from Mother Road Media here with you today. And today we're actually at National Bank of Arizona here on Stockton Hill Road in Kingman, Arizona. And we're getting to do something today that I've wanted to do for a long time. And we've had a relationship with National Bank here for about 8 years that I've personally come in and set up a World War II or Veterans Day display or Memorial Day display or whatever. And this was long before the museum was ever even a concept, when I was just simply collecting. And we've continued to do that, and we'll continue to do that even as we get our building put up. But today we're here and we're going to kind of go over a little bit of what we've got on display. And this is an opportunity for us to showcase to you some of the high points of what's going to be in our museum. And behind me, what you'll notice, we actually have a grouping of, this is part of our Women of War grouping. And we do this every March. We also do a women's history display that we do here at the bank, and we call it Women of the Greatest Generations. This next year we're going to do it, and we're going to also incorporate some more home front stuff into it. But today what we're looking at from left to right, we have a World War I U.S. Army nurse. And you'll notice that the dress is completely different than what you're typically used to seeing. And part of that is because World War I nursing was very similar to Civil War nursing still at this point. In addition to that, when the gals got over to Europe, they were horribly short supplied. And so they were forced to use whatever they could scrounge up from their Belgian and French counterparts. And so you kind of see a mismatch of American as well as Western European influence in the uniform. To her right, we have a World War II Army nurse, very typical of the time period. The cape is actually a civilian cape, which was not at all uncommon. Many of these women were civilian nurses before they went into the service, and they brought that kind of uniform stuff along with them. But we can also still see the lieutenant insignia, the nurse corps insignia, and this particular gal has a really neat pendant right here, which is actually an Army Air Corps locket. And that's actually made out of lucite with a set of collar insignia from whoever her loved one was. This particular uniform is named Margaret, and that's the name of the uniform that's sewn in the back of the uniform. To her right, we have a Marine Corps gal wearing the green seersucker working uniform. And so she would have been an administrative assistant, she could have been a mechanic. The Marines used women in all sorts of roles. They taught parachute training, they did all sorts of cool stuff. So that's one of more of their working uniforms. The Navy had a similar uniform, as did the Army. The Army one was brown, the Navy one was blue. With the Navy one right down here, we can actually see one of the wave hats that is in that blue seersucker type uniform. And what's really cool is this particular hat and grouping of stuff that's in here, it's hard to see, but I encourage you to come down and check it out, actually belongs to this lady right here. And that grouping actually came to us from Stewart's Militaria. They're over in, I don't want to screw this up, it's either Clarksdale or Clarksburg, Arizona. They used to be down in Mesa. Larry and Terry, wonderful, wonderful people. When we acquired that from them, they were so excited they gave it to us with free shipping and worked with us on the payments and everything, and super cool people, really into history. And then, so that is the typical World War II wave uniform. Like I said, they had a bunch of different hats they could wear depending on if it was wintertime or summertime, and this is an example of one of the summertime hats. And then to her right, we have a Vietnam-era U.S. Army nurse. And we hope to next year have some additional uniforms from Vietnam. We have 2 total this year. Next year I'm hoping to have 4. Like I say, when you come see our display that we do in March, it's all women's uniforms, and we'll this year probably have between 21 or 22. And then up behind us, you can see we have a couple of war bond posters, the Sullivan Brothers, as well as the Keep 'Em Flying, 2 very iconic posters from World War II. Yes, those are originals. And then on the table in front here, we also have some more just different photos and stuff like that. This one is one of my all-time favorites. It has a mother who's extremely proud of her 2 daughters who have both joined the U.S. Navy. So over here, as we've come around, we've got another 5 uniforms. Let me step over here so you guys can see more of that and less of me. Here we have the typical World War II U.S. Marine Corps uniform, not the dress blues, but rather the sage green dress uniform that was used more in office settings, not formal dress settings. To his right, we have one of my favorite uniforms, and this is a World War I combat engineer in his actual dress/work uniform. They didn't differentiate at that time period a whole lot unless you were a high-ranking officer. And I've always loved the engineer stuff. I grew up as an Army brat. My dad was a combat engineer. And what's particularly neat about this guy is down here we actually have his bag, which you notice is blue, which seems sort of weird, but that was actually what they called a barracks bag. And as World War I started, just with the Army nurses, they were very short on supplies. And they had lots of blue material, not so much green material, so the barracks bags, which would never be out in public, went ahead and they made them out of blue. Coming to our right, we have our Vietnam-era paratrooper. Paratroopers were involved in Vietnam, and we've tried to make this gentleman as accurate as possible. We gave him even a couple of fragmentation grenades, a smoke grenade, the towel to absorb the sweat because it's so humid and constant over there, a pair of period glasses, and the helmet. And the helmet is especially special to me. That helmet belonged to a gentleman. He used to live in Golden Valley. He passed away about 5 years ago now. His name was John Bean. And John was a huge influence in me as a collector. And every time that I do a display, I always wish that he was here to see it. And we'll actually show you some of his other stuff that's on another wall here at the bank. But John might certainly be gone, but he is never going to be forgotten as long as we're still here. To our right, moving along, we have a World War I sailor's uniform. This is especially neat. This gentleman, if we come around, I'll try to show you his insignia, is actually in naval aviation. Naval aviation was definitely in its infancy in that time period. He's actually wearing the hat marked USS New York. What's really cool about this hat is as this sailor continued to serve, there's different bands underneath there. In World War II, these were all changed to just say U.S. Navy, and that was mostly out of operational security. What is particularly interesting is underneath USS New York is USS Vestal, and the Vestal was the ship that was tied up alongside USS Arizona when she was sunk on December 7th, 1941 at Pearl Harbor. Finishing up our display over here, we have a Spanish-American War Army captain. Spanish-American War stuff, we don't get really deep into it, but we wanted to show the representation of what those uniforms look like. We're hoping that next year for our Veterans Day display, we're going to also have an Indian Wars uniform that will be complete. As we come over to our second section of the display here at the bank, we've got 3 generations of aviation represented, along with some other items. What's particularly cool, we have a World War I U.S. Army pilot. There were not a whole lot of men that were pilots during World War I. Interestingly enough, Army aviation was considered part of the Signal Corps during the First World War. And if you come by, I encourage you to check it out. So this grouping involving this display case with this uniform all came from the same gentleman. So this is his actual helmet, his flight helmet and goggles that he flew. And it's really, really hard for the gentleman with the camera to zoom in. Hopefully maybe we can get a still shot that we can edit into this later.
Oh, we got you.
Okay. But we've actually got a photo of this gentleman right here, along with a unit photo. So moving over here just a little bit to the right, we have a flak helmet from World War II. These were worn in the heavy bombers, the B-17s, the B-24s, to prevent guys from getting injured by the flak that was exploding inside the fuselage. Down here at the bottom, we actually have a World War II Army tank helmet. And if you ever saw the movie Fury with, well, you know who was in Fury. Anyways, Brad Pitt. And those are commonly seen throughout that movie. Above him, we have a World War II fighter pilot wearing his summer uniform, which was the tan with the cloth helmet. Winter would have been a dark green with a leather helmet. He is wearing the AN 6530 goggles with the tinted lenses, the regulation oxygen mask with the radio receivers and the headset. He's wearing his Mae West vest so that if he has to bail out, he'll be able to float. And underneath that is a survival vest. Moving to the right, we have the drill instructor's hat from Vietnam that was actually graciously donated by Larry Wilson, the winner of our Jeep raffle earlier this year. And moving over here, we have a couple of other interesting helmets. Here we have a Vietnam-era helmet from a helicopter pilot, and later we'll also get a good picture of the back of that helmet with the artwork on it. To the left of that, we actually have the cyclic control out of an Army helicopter. Could have been a Cobra, a Huey. Those cyclic controls were used in almost all of the Army helicopters made during that time period. We have our typical World War II M1 steel pot. These helmets were used from early-ish World War II all the way up into the 80s. And then coming along over here, we have an F-100 Super Sabre pilot. This actually uniform was worn in combat with that helmet in Vietnam. The gentleman flew 100 combat missions and came home. And so we were honored when a friend of his who had been given to was one of the gentlemen with the local RC club that flies model airplanes decided that this helmet and setup was a better display for us than it was in his closet. So we thank him for that from the Golden Eagles RC Club. And as we move along here to the other side, we've got another grouping of uniforms here. Here we have a World War I U.S. Army captain's uniform. Just a very simple affair as opposed to what you see as we get into World War II and things like that. Behind him we have a U.S. Army medic from World War II. And everything in there is a complete real thing. I lied. I realized earlier I told somebody that we only had one reproduction piece in our museum, and that's our Medal of Honor that was struck by Vanguard for museums. The other thing that we actually have is, if you notice this tubing right here for his IV, that was actually, there's an IV bottle in there, and it was actually came from the same gentleman that made them for the movie Hacksaw Ridge. So I figured if it was good enough for Hacksaw Ridge, it was probably good enough for the Museum of the Great Wars here in Kingman, Arizona. And so when we have him in a more permanent location, we'll have that displayed. Hopefully we can do it with like an M1 Grand Rifle in the classic pose. Coming over here, we have a World War II Army WAC, Woman's Auxiliary. And what's neat about this uniform is these, if you look, we've got the hobby hat, which wasn't a hobby hat because they have a hobby. That was the name of the lady who came up with the design. The other cool thing is these ribbons are these plastic laminated ribbons, which I've never seen very many examples of. So that's kind of a neat feature on this particular uniform. We also have her original World War II purse. Like I said earlier in other videos, uniforms are fairly easy to come up with. Women's uniforms are a little bit harder, but shoes and purses are extremely difficult, and so it's really cool whenever we can bring those together. Behind her up here we have a World War II U.S. Navy sailor. He is wearing a World War II 1944 dated life jacket. He is a talker, so every gun mount, every position on the ship would have one of these talker helmets. These guys, they've got the sound-powered telephone that rides on their chest. And so if you ever watched a movie like The Enemy Below or any of those, you'll always see one of these guys at every position. And these sound-powered phones would actually just plug into the ship using a cable like this, and they worked very, very well. And next year, my hope is we'll have enough funding to have acquired a few more mannequins, and he will actually have a pair of pants that I found for him. And I assure you that Navy dungaree pants are about the hardest thing to find after shoes. Moving along here to our right, the last uniform we have over here is a World War II Army nurse, but this is actually a dress uniform as opposed to a working uniform. What was especially neat about this was the Army, to try to do something for the Nurse Corps, actually came up with an OD green cape. And that was the only conflict I'm aware of that it was used in. I could be wrong. If I am, I'm sure somebody will send me an email and say, Tom, you're wrong, which I will gracefully bow down and realize I was. And anyhow, so these are kind of scarce. We don't see these very often. And we're honored that we were able to acquire one for this museum, for this display with our second lieutenant here. And then coming along here, the very last thing we have, and I'll just slide this out for you, is another one of our war bond posters. Here we have a Marine looking at Japan, just letting them know that they're next. So, as we slide over to the far wall here, the southern wall of the bank is what this would be, we've got a few different interesting artifacts. And what we try to do is bring in some different things, different shadow boxes. A lot of these are at the pawn shop over at 1822 East Northern Avenue, Pawn World here in Kingman. But what I tried to do is bring stuff off of the wall and bring it in so people could see it up close and in person. And we have, we've got a grouping. We've actually talked about this one in a previous video with the DFC that was found out at the dump. We've got some nice groupings of photos and things like that. We have our cigarette case that was on the Bataan Death March. One of the things we have not talked about in a previous video is this group of artifacts in here that are all from Gettysburg. And that is getting a little further back than what we typically do with our museum. But the display in the back is especially cool. There was a gentleman, he came over from England. He wanted to serve in the Army. He couldn't. Long story short, he worked as volunteered as a nurse's aide. After the war, he started putting these together out of fragments from the Battle of Gettysburg and selling them to raise money for the wounded Gettysburg veterans. So in many ways, a very, very cool piece by a very, very special gentleman. We're honored to have this piece in our collection. Moving along over here, I mentioned earlier our friend John Bean, and this is John when he was in service in 1968 over in country. These were some of his artifacts, his personal stuff that he gave me when he passed away. And I'm honored to be the shareholder, or the caretaker of them, I suppose. This is Glenn Thorpe. This is what started it all. Glenn is the gentleman you heard me talk about at the Marine Corps ball when a gentleman came in and wanted to sell his dad's brother's stuff. And so Glenn is here with us on display. We have some more artifacts over here. This is an especially cool piece. This is one of the original graduation certificates from the Kingman Gunnery School that somebody would have received when they earned their gunner's wings here in World War II. Coming along over here, this is PFC Bemis. He's also one of the gentlemen who, one of my customers brought this in, and they knew this was their dad's stuff, and they wanted me to be the caretaker of it, and so now the museum is the caretaker of it. Up here we also have PFC Raymond Morrison. We talked about him when we did our Memorial Day presentation. A young African American from Cleveland who was killed in action in Korea. Moving over here, this is one of the coolest things. I'd like to give a huge shout out to my friend Jay. Jay found this multiple years ago and was kind enough to donate it to the museum. And this is the ship's party for the USS Enterprise, December 26, 1945. So the war has ended. The Enterprise has actually just come back from a magic carpet trip where they were bringing all the GIs home. And this was sort of the last hurrah for that ship, for this crew. And I've always thought it would have just been a phenomenal party to be able to go back in the time machine and hang out with, and to listen to the music and the stories and to see these guys together. So up here we have a B-24 out of Italy. A lot of people always think England, but we flew a ton of combat missions out of North Africa and Italy as well, bombing into Romania, Yugoslavia, that area. Anyhow, as the song goes, you should have seen it in color. So finishing up with a couple of our last few things over here. You'll notice all of these, and they look like they're newer pieces, and they are. We actually made this display for Veterans Day for this year. And this is our tribute to cats in service of their country. And yes, you heard that right, cats. Everybody already knows that Tom is a self-avowed crazy cat guy, so there's no reason to go rehash all that again. But anyways, this is all part of a book that I'm working on, and we have each of these photos. These are not snapshots grabbed off the internet. These are either press photos or albums or just snapshots that we have. And what we've tried to do is tell a story about different cats and how they serve the country. A couple of high points. The Admiral's cat. This is Admiral Reeves. This picture was taken probably 1947, 1948. This is his Maine Coon sitting in his house. Gorgeous cat, super awesome guy. We have his photo album of his house and his cat. I don't know where all of his other albums ended up, but we got that one. One of my favorite photos that's in there is his wife, and she's actually walking the cat on a leash smoking a cigarette. And I'm like, yeah, 1947 America, baby. So we've got her. We've got different ones. We've got Safe in Sydney. This young man rescued the ship's cat from the USS Blue when she was torpedoed and sunk off of Guadalcanal. Safe in the Arms of Love. We have Suribachi Sue with a Marine on Iwo Jima. So come down and check these out. Look for that for us, hopefully later part of the spring. That's going to be a book that I'm putting out. It's going to be published here locally by H&H Printers. I think it's going to be a pretty cool thing. Also in the last part of our cat display here, we have it's not a real cat, it's just a replica, but that is Able Sea Cat Simon. Simon was the cat of the HMS Amethyst, which was shot up on the Yangtze River by Chinese communists. And he was the only cat to ever receive the Dickin Award, which is a big thing in England. And so there's a little story about him here. Unfortunately, he died shortly after returning back to England. But the crew loved him to death. He slept in the captain's hat. He killed the biggest rat on the ship, which they had named Mao Zedong. And every day after the ship was damaged and he started to heal up, he would go to sick bay on his own and spend time with each of the crew that had been wounded. Our final display for you here is our Navy Cross. And if you followed along with us on Facebook, you saw this cross took an episodic journey this year where we sent it on Southwest Airlines to Madison, Wisconsin, Jill over at M14P was nice enough to take it for us. And then she handed it off at Oshkosh to the Fagan Fighter Organization, which actually flew this Navy Cross in a Curtiss Helldiver. That was important to us because this medal was earned by Lieutenant J.G. Kenneth Holmes flying a Helldiver off the USS Bunker Hill. And so we were able to actually reunite his medal with the same type of airplane that he flew. The medal was then brought home by the Consolidated P-4Y out of Casa Grande. That is the only one of those aircraft still flying in the world. And the crew, Rob specifically, was nice enough to bring the medal home from the Fagan Fighters Museum in Minnesota back to Casa Grande. And it was delivered to me by a friend of mine yesterday named Dave, and we were able to set it up and bring it in for everybody to enjoy. I hope you have enjoyed this video today. I hope you've enjoyed us kind of getting to do a little overview of what's here at the bank. Please come in. It's open every day, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. They are more than inviting to have anybody come in. You don't have to be a customer. Come check it out. We sincerely thank National Bank of Arizona for the amazing relationship that we've had with them. They're the bank for our museum. They're my personal bank, and the relationship we're going to continue to have with them in years to come. So thank you for tuning in to This is History. I'm here with our wonderful folks at Mother Road Media. From all of us, have a great day.